Welcome to Curated Cribs at the Tama Museum of Art. I'm Cindy Peterson, the Executive Director, and it is a pleasure to have Ken Gross with us here this evening. And Ken and I have worked together in 2018 as Drive has come to the museum with the rolling sculptures into our galleries. I'd love to talk a little bit about Ken. Many of you, if not everyone, has seen the exhibition that we had in 2018 and perhaps even met Ken. It's wonderful to have him back through this Curated Cribs. And Ken Gross is the former executive director of the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. His 13 critically acclaimed Art Deco and streamlined car exhibitions have appeared at major fine art museums nationwide. The author of 24 books on automobiles, and that must have started early. I know you'll tell us a little bit about your history that started when you were a young child. Ken is the recipient of the Automotive Hall of Fame Distinguished Service Citation, the International Motor Press Association's Ken W. Purdy Award, the Motor Press Guild's Dean Bachelor Award, and the Lia Iacocca Award. He loves all things Italian. He's owned 3 Ducatis, 2 Ferraris, and we're going to show some of that here. Oh, wow, Ken. And a Lamborghini, which we will also see. Ken has curated Bellissima, the Italian automotive renaissance 1946 to 1975 for the Frist Museum in Nashville in mid-2016, and presented rolling sculpture at the North Carolina Museum of Art in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2017. And we see an image here of Ken in the gallery with a beautiful automobile of the Porsche at the NCMA. And he's curated a 2018 exhibition of streamlined modern automobiles for the Portland Art Museum in Portland, Oregon, which of course was followed later in the fall of 2018 by Drive, iconic American cars and motorcycles at the Tama Museum of Art here in Roanoke, Virginia. And we'll show a little bit of the slides. And Ken, welcome. It's great to be able to virtually have a conversation and tell us about those things that we experienced here in our freight elevator as we've gotten the automobiles up to the second floor.
Well, your museum, and good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be here and nice to be doing this. The Talman was one of the 2 most challenging museums. Art museums, as a general rule, were not designed to have automobiles. And the elevator at the Taubman had posed its challenges. In a few places, I think we're showing a picture of a Pontiac GTO where we took the bumpers off and took the grill off to get it in. We measured the cars carefully. You're looking at a Packard, a 1934 Packard V12. Again, very, very tight fit, but with the cooperation of Jim and Mary and the team at the Taubman, we got them all. We got them all in, and it really wasn't a problem.
And you're right. We did, and I remember you told me on the phone there's going to be a couple that's only going to have like a thumbnail at each side, even room, and you were right. And those go jacks that we saw in the freight elevator. Tell us a little bit about that, because that is that way to be able to move the automobiles.
Yeah, these are they're a very clever device. Each one of them fits under each of the 4 wheels. We jack them up so we get the car off the ground. And with the go jacks, the car can turn in its own axis, and we can move it anywhere. We can move it sideways, basically whatever we need to do. Well, we couldn't do an installation like this without them. In Houston, we had to take apart the gift shop for that very Packard that you're looking at, that yellow Packard. They wanted it in the gallery, and we literally took shelves off the gift shop. We had to go jack it around a stone sarcophagus. There was no moving the sarcophagus. And we got it into the front lobby, and people came in the next day and they were astounded to see an automobile in the lobby. But thanks to careful moves and go jacks, anything's possible.
Well, and I agree, in the back of our house, we were able to round the corner. So we put, of course, most of the automobiles up on the second floor, but there were two that we did put out in our atrium space that came about, and in the space in the galleries. That was the Tucker that we put out. And then this one here, talk about this particular one where, the courier actually came with it.
Right, that's the Cadillac Cyclone. It was loaned to us by the General Motors Heritage Collection, and they sent their guy, who because they're reluctant to have anyone drive their cars, and that particular car had a few challenges as well. The black nose cones that you see there were a device long before the technology existed to preserve the correct spacing on the highway between that car and other cars. We were able to take them off so we could get them in, get it through the door. But that's a fabulous car. It was one of the last Motorama cars. It was done in 1961, and show cars like that in the 1950s era, right after World War II, showed people the sheer exuberance of Detroit saying, we can make cars that look like airplanes, we can have cars that look like spaceships. We've won the war and there's nothing going to stop us. And that car is a beautiful example. It also has tail fins, which were a popular thing in that era.
Well, and thank you, Ken, for bringing cars into fine art museums across the country, which have attracted over 1 million visitors. And we're so grateful to have been part of that. And we'll show we have a couple slides here where you can see some of the installation shots as it's gone through. And every exhibition is totally different, which I love.
Right, well, that's part of the fun of working with individual fine art museums, because everyone has their view on how they do didactics, how they showcase cars, even how they spotlight cars, and that gave the museum folk in each instance a chance to exercise their creativity to do things the way they like to do them. One common parallel, though, in all of those exhibitions is none of those spaces had ever had automobiles, and it really shocked and surprised people. They were looking at cars in a way they had never looked at an automobile. And in some instances, on little platforms and things, they saw a car really as a piece of sculpture, a big piece of sculpture, but they were seeing them in a very different way. They could admire them, and it's thrilling to do that, to present automobiles to people in a way they've never encountered them. I think we made a few car converts out of this.
Most definitely. I know we did here, and we had people traveling in from further away, in terms that it really flipped our visitation and reaching new audiences, across the southeastern area, as well as into the metropolitan areas that have come down to see and view Drive as it was here. Well, thank you for joining us and sharing your collection at your home, your library, as well as many of the other behind the scenes that we'll see. You're in Hamilton, Virginia, right now. As we said, it's raining right now. And hello to Trish. Thank you so much for assisting this evening. And Trish is the Vice President of the National Automotive Technicians Educational Foundation, which thank you for that, and continuing that education throughout the country. So tell me about your office space. I mean, it is an amazing archive, and how this came about.
Mm-hmm. So I bought my first car magazine when I was 12 years old, and it's the May 1954 issue of Road and Track. I think you have a picture of it.
We do.
I was very excited because my neighbor, Bruce Durkee, who owned Durkee Mower, the Marshmallow Fluff people, he owned an MGTC, a little blue, actually Clipper blue MG. And he was kind enough to let a car crazy 12-year-old kid sit in it and help him clean it. and I'll never forget going for the first ride in that car, because the steering wheel was on the right, it being a British car, and that's the only way they came. And I sat on the left. So here I am, 12 years old, sitting in that driver's seat but with no steering wheel, driving down Forest Avenue. I've never forgotten that moment. So I bought that magazine because it had an MG Octagon on the cover. I couldn't wait to show it to my father. I brought it home and I presented it at the dinner table, and he looked at it. He looked at the cover and he said, "This costs 35 cents." And he said, "You've spent almost your whole allowance on a car magazine. You're going to have to learn to manage your money a little better."
Little did he know that started your journey, where, the multiple books that you've authored, and as we can see in your space, really archive of a library, all relating to, of course, the automobile industry. And how do you find things in the library as we look around? How is it organized? It's over years, and you're writing.
Well, there's a lot of magazines and books here, as you can see. There's even there's an extra room with even more in it, and most of it is organized. Although you wouldn't think so, but there are sections for major cars like Ferraris and Bugattis, Alfa Romeos, all the German cars. There's a hot rod section. There's a vintage car section, a classic car section, a motorcycle section, a racing car section. So fundamentally, I know where to go to get some of these things. I mean, Trish can show you right here that the blue books are Bugatti and the red books are Ferrari, and it goes on and on. But I kind of know where things are as a general rule. And I've collected these things one by one, and I've read most of them, or read at least part of most of them. So I have a pretty good understanding of where things are. I'm blessed with a very decent memory. And the other day I was trying to think of, I was given an assignment to write a Ferrari story about the crash of the Ferrari market in 1989. And I remembered an issue of Auto Week that had a cover story all about the Ferrari market crash. And, sure enough, I had that issue. Of course I had that issue. So I was able to find it and start the research that I needed to do. There are four. What you're looking at right now, one of my real heroes was Rene Dreyfus, the French champion racing driver in the 1920s. He owned a restaurant in New York City that I was privileged to go to many times. And well, Bugatti is one of my favorite marques, and Rene is one of my favorite drivers. I have a lot of Rene memorabilia here, and this is the motorcycle section, as you probably saw one of the pictures. I've owned a lot of motorcycles over the years, Black Shadows, and so if I'm interested in a particular subject, I'll get whatever has been written about it. I like to joke. I've done a lot of ghostwriting for Jay Leno over the years, and Jay has a technique where if he finds a car he likes, he studies it a little bit, and then he buys the car. Now, I can't afford to buy every car, but I can usually afford to buy the book. So if I'm interested in a particular thing like Vincent's, I'll get the book. And if there's more books on Vincent's, I'll buy them all. This is a small point of discussion with Trish and me. But I pointed out to her that at some point, all these books are worth a fortune, and she can take that to the bank. So.
Well, and are there any idols that stand out to you? And I know we talked about earlier about Carroll Shelby that you met once.
Oh, yeah, well, come and you can look at my sort of Hall of Fame section here. One of the great things about being a writer and an enthusiast is that you get to meet your heroes. And that has really happened for me over the years. I can just show you a couple of examples. Some of the people that I looked up to before I became an active auto enthusiast included people like Sterling Moss, shown here, winning the Mille Miglia in his Mercedes, Carroll Shelby and Maston Gregory, two of my favorite all-time drivers, Luigi Canetti, who started Ferrari in the United States. He was Enzo Ferrari's friend, and he pretty much started selling cars in this humble little building on 11th Avenue. And Phil Hill, of course, who was the world champion driver in 1961. It's been my privilege to meet these folk, in some cases to interview them. And in fact, if you, I can show you another example. So here's Norman Dewis, who was Jaguar's test driver for many, many years. He tested every important Jaguar ever. He was in his 90s, and I got to know Norman over a 10-year period. And actually did a program with him where we spent an evening together, and it's all on tape. Meeting your heroes is maybe one of the best parts of being able to be a car enthusiast. In many instances, almost all instances, not only are they larger than life, but they're really wonderful people. And sometimes I have to pinch myself. I think I'm just the guy who bought the magazine. But I've been able over the years to certainly not be an equal, but certainly be talked about in the same sentence.
Well, I agree, and that shined through as you were at our museum and talked about, you know, and shared those stories from your idols, but also, you know, your knowledge. And I know I'm curious of what's in your garage. Well, and we're in your garage now, and got a little bit of a peek into Pebble Beach, but also, you know, you said that you're going to a gathering tomorrow of hot rods with over 3,000 people coming together.
Right. Well, there'll be about 3,000 cars there, and I'm going to drive this, which is my 1939 Ford convertible coupe. It looks pretty much like a stock 39 Ford, but it's got kind of the heart of a lion here because it's got a 400 horsepower Chrysler Hemi engine in it, and a 5-speed transmission and disc brakes. So the notion is to have a car. Hot rodders call a car like this a sleeper or an Uncle Daniel, because from the exterior it looks as though it doesn't have enough suds to pull a wet piece of gum out of a baby's mouth, but it's really a pretty fast car in many ways. And this is a car that I think it might have been repainted once 50 years ago. But other than that, it's very standard looking. It's a delight to drive. I had a neighbor who had one of these growing up, and I just loved the car. And I used to get up early and see if I could hitch a ride to school with him, because it was just a car I was fascinated about. And I've been lucky enough to buy one and do some modifications on it and enjoy driving it. So I'll drive this up tomorrow.
Well, and I know you have a hot rod that was your first one. It was 1957, is that correct?
Well, we were talking about my back when I was in high school. I had a 1940 Ford, like this green car here, which we'll show you in a moment. But I was in a hot rod club, as so many kids were in the 50s. And this is my original plaque. We've repainted it, but this dates from back to 1957. I was a member of the Choppers of Salem, Mass. They met on Monday nights at the local library, but they really didn't. That's what I told my parents. I said that I had to go to a study group at the library on Monday nights. The Choppers were meeting in Bill Bernier's garage. One night, my father went to the library looking for me, and the librarian said, "Kenny doesn't come here on Monday nights. We don't have a study group here on Monday nights." And I caught hell and was grounded for a while. But I think in time, my parents really finally understood that this whole business was going to take me somewhere pretty good in life. This is my 40 Ford, which is similar to a car I owned in high school, except mine was black. And I just love these. You know, the styling is pretty classic, and you sit in a kind of a narrow way. Your shoulders are touching. People were smaller in the 40s, and this car has just a timeless appeal to it, I think. If Trish can squeeze her way through here, we can show you the Roadster, which is. Maybe go through over here. Mm-hmm. So if there's anything that could be called kind of the pièce de résistance of this collection, it's this car, which is a 1932 Ford, and it's been modified extensively. It's got supercharged engine. Everything that can be polished or plated or souped up or changed has been done on this car. It's a joy to drive. I've owned it for almost 25 years, and I basically planned it when I was 17. I kind of sketched out what I wanted, and I wasn't sure it could ever happen. It wasn't until my 40s that I had both the sort of skill level and the finances to enlist the aid of a great builder and have him help and get this car together. And it's again, I like to drive my cars. I mean, I'll go to a car event, but I'm really not somebody who wants to sit around with a polished car. And I want to drive them, and that's the fun. So above us here, we have Trish's car. This is not a one-man band. This is her 1961 Porsche. I'm not sure quite how you can see that, but I will go to the end maybe and take a look. So after all these years, last year, Trish decided that she really had to have her own old car. And we were lucky enough to find this Porsche. I had a very similar one in 1965. And she's been enjoying it, driving it. And I think it's the start of a whole new way of us to experience old cars together. We've been to a couple of events with this. Right now, it's sitting up there with this engine out because after 500 miles, I'm not going to say Trish wore the engine out, but we definitely needed some work. So we're getting the engine completely rebuilt, and we hope to have it back by early August so she can enjoy the car this summer.
Wonderful. Well, and talk a little bit about, not only have you curated exhibitions across the country, but you've also recently donated your collection of aluminum car parts.
Yeah, yes, I collected flathead Ford speed equipment for quite a while. I like to joke I was speed equipment deprived as a child. These manifolds and cylinder heads were very expensive. So a number of years ago, I started collecting them, and the Ford Flathead was a very popular engine in the 40s and 50s, and there were literally hundreds of manufacturers. So once I got up to about 150 manifolds, we joked and called it Trish's aluminum annuity. It was probably time for them to go into a museum where more people could see them. So I think we have a photograph there. I donated them to the Museum of American Speed in Lincoln, Nebraska. And they also had well over 100. So now they've got 300 of these manifolds on a wall. It's the largest collection of its kind in the world. And I'm pleased to have had a small part in putting it together. So we replaced all those with auto art, if you will. And in the center, the poster with the yellow is from our Porsche exhibit at the North Carolina Museum of Art. And Dream Cars was at the Frisch Center in Nashville. It's the great thing about these exhibitions is they lend themselves to wonderful visuals, and that's something that I enjoy. And people get not only a catalog but necessarily a poster as well. The cars are visually wonderful, so preserving them is a great way to kind of keep a little of the exhibit with you forever.
True, and talk a little bit more about how you curate. So in terms of your relationships with the different collectors, once I know when we worked together as a team here at the museum with you, and we brainstormed on the direction that we were going, the iconic American cars and motorcycles, and the name Drive came about. And talk about that process of working and pulling from all over, because the trucks came. We had 3 coming in from different places. We had Al Mason driving down both of his.
Well, the ideas for exhibitions. There've been a number of themes that we've done, like Art Deco or streamlined cars, Italian custom coachwork. In the case of Roanoke, we did iconic, great American cars. Having been a Pebble Beach judge for 31 years, having been involved for longer than that in the car hobby, it's been my privilege to meet many of the great collectors. And collectors are very interested in these exhibitions. Miles Collier, who owns a fabulous collection in Naples, Florida, his museum is one of the best in the world, literally. And he's been wonderful about loaning cars. He loaned us a Mercer for the exhibition in Roanoke. And he paid me a compliment. He said, "You're doing the Lord's work." I guess from a car enthusiast point of view, gathering up these cars is just that. But to do that, you need to develop the trust of the people who are loaning the cars. Many of these cars are worth seven figures, just like a painting might be. So if you tell someone that you're putting a themed collection together at a fine art museum, they pretty much have to trust you in order to loan you the car or the motorcycle. And I've been able to develop that trust with a lot of people, and I don't take it lightly. We take very good care of anything that we borrow. I love developing these themes. I mean, with Art Deco cars, for example, from the 1920s to the 1940s, the Art Moderne, Art Deco influence was everywhere. It was in ships and trains and buildings. Well, it also was with automobiles. And so there are a number of cars that when you bring them together, it gives people a chance who are interested in Art Deco, for example, to see, wow, look at that Cord, or look at this Duesenberg. These cars really reflected the Art Deco influence that began in Paris in 1925 and went on for many, many years. So for me, creating these exhibitions is a lot of fun. Trying to decide what the cars should be, trying to work with collectors, convincing them to loan us the cars, and then working with these wonderful museum people who are skilled and cooperative and helpful to put on an exhibition that people find memorable and educational.
And that definitely was the case, and your passion shined through, but also the trust. We saw that over and over again as you worked with the collectors, but also as collectors came to the openings, and also the interest of the public coming in. Even being surprised that they learned something new. You'd see people in the galleries talking to each other. The one sharing the information and different tidbits, but also, just being moved by seeing the particular car that you brought or motorcycle that they've never seen before on that part of it. And talk about hoods up. We did a number of hoods up, and that interest there, and what kinds of things that you were able to share.
Well, one could argue that the automobile was the defining invention of the 20th century. Everybody has car memories. Everybody has cars they like, or the cars that they fancied. Car enthusiasts have cars that they wish they could own. So people can identify when they see these cars in a museum setting and have a chance to really study them and look at them and learn something about them. From collectors' point of view, I found this very interesting. Many of the collectors, the top collectors, they've been to all the concours. They've won all the awards. So there's nothing left to do in that regard. But a museum is the new frontier for them. And everybody's a winner. We're not saying this particular car is the best of show. We're saying it deserves to be in this panoply, this concept that we're showing. So collectors are happy to share their cars, and they're also happy to be in a non-competitive situation where they can relax and people are enjoying their cars. And they're willing to do some neat stuff. I mean, you mentioned Al Mason. I mean, Al had to take the bumpers and the grill and a whole bunch of things off his GPO. There are a lot of collectors who wouldn't go that far, but Al, who's a very good mechanic, he wanted his car in the gallery, and he would do whatever we needed to do to get it there. And, we appreciated it.
I agree. Well, what's on the horizon for you, Ken? Your next exhibition, your next book, something else?
Well, I'm working on two exhibitions right now. One is for the Vero Beach Museum of Art on Art Deco cars. We had to reschedule it for COVID, so it's probably not going to be till 2022 now. I'm also working with a new museum called the Savoy Automotive Museum. That's in Cartersville, Georgia, north of Atlanta. It's under construction right now. Big, beautiful museum that I think people will find very exciting. And I'm working on three books. I'm working on a hot rod collection book for Ross Myers, who loaned us a Cobra for the exhibition in Roanoke. I'm working on a book for another collector in Chicago who owns some wonderful 1930s era cars. And I'm also doing a book on Vasek Kolak, who was a Czechoslovakian immigrant who was the first standalone Porsche dealer in the United States. He came to America to escape the Nazis with little more than the clothes on his back and became a multimillionaire Porsche dealer and racer in California. And I'm working with his son and his granddaughter. He's passed away on an exciting book project. So fortunately, the phone keeps ringing and people keep calling with interesting projects. And as long as I can do it, I'm very happy to do it. I'm grateful that there are these opportunities. Every new creative challenge keeps your mind going, keeps you thinking, and allows me to share something I love with people.
Well, those sound like amazing opportunities. And as you said, just exciting to open new doors and work with a variety of museums as new museums come up to be, but also different collectors and telling stories that you do so well in your writing and too. And here's an image from our exhibition where we were doing the hoods up and looking underneath. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yep. Well, when you display a car in a museum, people can only see the exterior, really. They can't see the interior very well, although we try to light it in such a way, and they really can't see the engines. So we developed this hoods up idea, a special evening where people can come in. Literally, we lift up hoods and they can look at engines, and we can tell them a little more about the car than they could just see in the standard exhibition. That's been a wonderful thing, and we've done that in almost every museum. And again, the owners of these cars are, if you're careful about what you're doing, they're happy to let you look at the car in great detail. But there's a saying that many car collectors have. We say, we're not the owners of these cars. We're just the custodians. And so at some point they're going to go to someone else, but while we have them, we can share them.
And I'm so glad that is the case, because being able to share, as you said, and there's many stories that I've heard that have been shared across the time. Here we see the Tucker, correct, that we did not fit, and we knew that beforehand, into our freight elevators. So we planned it to have it in the atrium, which was really that teaser. As people came in, they could see it. And I heard many stories about the Tucker, and there are not many Tuckers in left. Is that correct?
No, they built, that's correct. They built 51, 49 survived. They were very, very rare. Francis Coppola did that wonderful movie about Preston Tucker years ago, and Francis did that because his uncle and his father were going to be Tucker dealers. Tucker is this great post-war story where a man taking on the onslaught and the might of Detroit with his own unusual car. He didn't make it. The car was not a commercial success, but it's been a romantic success for years. We had 14 Tuckers at the Pebble Beach Concours a few years ago. People love seeing them. Little details like this, like the center headlight that turns with the wheels, and engine in the rear, and a very streamlined body for 1948. And that Tucker that we had at Roanoke is the prototype. That's the car they call the Tin Goose. It was handmade. It was so heavy with all the lead they had to make to form it that the suspension collapsed on opening night. They had to jack it up where people couldn't see it. It's owned by the Swigert Museum up in Pennsylvania. They don't lend it very often, but we were very fortunate to have it in Roanoke. So yeah, I mean, that's part of what you try to do with these exhibitions is show people something they might not see, or they have not seen, or they always wanted to see.
Well, in our exhibition, we had 3 motorcycles that you included. Talk about those particular ones, because I even had a gentleman that came in and was so emotionally moved with seeing the Indian chief in person. Right.
Well, we had what I think are the 3 greatest American motorcycles. We had a knucklehead Harley Davidson. We had an Indian chief that was owned by Steve McQueen and loaned to us by his son Chad. And then we had a Crocker. The Crocker is kind of the mystery American motorcycle because they made fewer than 100 of them in Los Angeles. Al Crocker was he'd been an Indian dealer, and he thought he could build a better motorcycle than Indian did. So he did, and he said if, to his customers, if somebody beats you on one of my bikes, if they beat you on with an Indian or a Harley, I'll give you your money back. I don't think he ever had to spend the money. His bikes were really quick. So we had these three, and they're just, again, the theme of that exhibition was icons and iconic, and these were three iconic motorcycles. And having the Steve McQueen bike was like another notch because there's probably no more iconic Hollywood personality than Steve McQueen, and he owned, as they say, he owned that motorcycle.
Wonderful. Well, and thank you for sharing, what you're working on, what you've worked on in the past, your journey. And it's great to be able to go into your garage and into your library and hear and see everything that you do.